typo.
Oh, right. We had an angry caller.
Had a typo. Had a typo on that, and that is absolutely. When I lived in L.A., there is a large community of Armenians that live out there, and the Armenian genocide that's like they wear that on their sleeve. They're like, none of you all know about our genocide. I'm like, I never heard. I didn't know nothing about no Armenian. How do you even spell that? I can't even spell Armenian. Where is that?
Yeah, apparently not. Apparently you spelled it American.
Or that was the producer sending us the notes. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, well, we let him go.
Right. So in the last 125 years, the numbers are somewhere in the neighborhood of 149,469,610. So
100 and how much?
150 million. 150 million under communism. And then there's something...
And this is from starvation or murder?
Right, not from war, but from starvation or murder. And there's another one called The Tears of Jihad, politicalislam.com. Death of Slaves by Islam. I didn't know anything about this. I really dug into it. But there's a writer back in the day, Thomas Sowell, who wrote a book called Race and Culture. He estimates that 11 million slaves were shipped across the Atlantic and 14 million were sent to the Islamic nations of North Africa and the Middle East. So for every slave captured, a lot of them died. The estimates of this collateral damage vary, but there was a guy named David Livingstone who was a missionary, and he estimated that for every slave who reached a plantation, 5 others were killed in the initial raid or died of illness and privation on the forced march. Well, those who were left behind were usually very young, very weak, sick, and old, but they soon died as well. So for 25 million slaves delivered to the market, we have an estimated death of 120 million, and Islam ran the entire wholesale slave trade in Africa. Did you know that?
Wow, I did not know that. No, absolutely not.
Nobody's talking about this stuff.
That's amazing.
120 million.
How is this not taught in high school?
If it wasn't for the interwebs, we wouldn't have none of this.
Well, I read it on the internet, so I know it's correct.
It's gotta be. Well, when you cross-reference, or if you get the answer you're looking for, yeah, that's the answer I wanted. Right, that's when you stop. You're done. So apparently, and this goes on and on. He then starts to chronicle the deaths of Christians by Islam, the Hindus by Islam, the Buddhists, and then the Armenian genocide by Islam. And it's funny how it's ironic how they talk about the Armenian genocide by Islam and Hitler's Holocaust. There's like a little bit of a transition here. He says Muslim decapitation of 1.5 to 2 million Christian Armenians. This genocide was marked by the Grand Mustafa and to Hitler and to the Nazis, and adapted for the Jews, which ended up creating the Holocaust. Prior to being associated with Hassani, Hitler had not committed any arrest or persecution of the Jewish people. The genocide was initiated after Hitler's association and collaboration with Muslims and their jihad army offered as Nazi collaborators.
So that ended up being a benchmark used by Hitler.
Correct. The Armenian genocide.
Oh, boy. Yikes.
So they're going back, a couple thousand years, but the numbers they're coming up with is, somewhere in the neighborhood of, what was it? 400 million Hindus. They're talking 60 million Christians. I mean, they're talking hundreds of millions of deaths due to the Islamic State. Hundreds of millions.
Yikes.
Hundreds of millions.
Really?
Yeah, hundreds of millions. They're saying that there are 80. Wow. They're saying there are 80 million Hindus, and then there was some adjusted numbers. Wound up being somewhere around 400 million Hindus during this time period where they went in there and the total jihad against India. The country of India today is only half the size of ancient India due to jihad. They even say,
oh my gosh,
in India, they even say that the mountains near India are called Hindu Kush, which means funeral pyre of the Hindus. The mountains. Because that's where they're all slaughtered.
Wow.
Just, I mean, I know I'm going off on this thing, but I really want to make it a point that this is Islam. As bad as we talk about communism, Islam is worse. It's exponentially worse. It's triply, quadruply worse.
It's at minimum equal.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, minimum equal.
Well, but I don't see in communism to where you can, where they lay out laws where you can rape women, or like in Islam, a woman that claims that she's raped has to have two men to witness that and come to her aid and say, yeah, we saw it.
That's true. I got to give communism a little bit of a break there.
A little bit of credit.
I mean, really, well, give them a break, because to sit there and say that they're on par with the Islam of the Middle East is just, it's just being a little bit too harsh on communism, because at least, one thing that they do is they love to parade out their equal rights with women or whatever. Even way back in the day when America was what feminists call today completely sexist.
Right.
The Soviet Union was sending women into space, and they had female officers in their armies, and this was back in like the 50s.
Right, they had big 250-pound, 6'5", muscle-bound drill instructors that were female.
Yes, they did.
Isn't that the image?
And the ones that weren't that big, if they were smaller, they got sent up into space. They had the first woman in space.
Wow. No, that's amazing. Okay, well, so I'm going through this history. I'm falling completely down this rabbit hole. I walk away from it for a little bit just to kind of contemplate everything going on today. Well, we know Obama was raised communist. However, we also know that he's a Muslim and, practicing Muslim Islam. And Putin is former KGB. And I got to keep reminding myself, no matter how much I like what he's doing over there, he is still a man that would love to put the screws to you if he had to. Tighten down the bolts, and really, if you had to disappear, he would do it in a heartbeat. You can't.
Most likely. Well, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that he's dancing around the idea. He's doing dry runs.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. However, he's old school communist, if you will, and maybe wants a new version of it to where he does allow Christians to practice their religion freely without persecution. I mean, I could see altering communism a little bit and making it palatable for people that have been oppressed. However, when you see what we've got here, it's still complete night and day. Now you've got Russia and Putin in Syria, and you've got Obama and ISIS fighting Russia. So I just had this brain thought that, the end of the world comes because Islam and communism have the Third World War. Us free people are irrelevant.
That's interesting. What I mean, are they irrelevant to who?
Us in America, we're irrelevant to the takeover of the world because we're being led by a Muslim who's supporting Muslims and the ISIS to fight Russia and the communists. Both those fractions want the world to themselves.
So there's no room in the world for both Islam and communism?
I don't think so. I really don't think so. Now I will say this.
I don't see how it is.
I will say this. I think that Obama, Islam, his dad, his real dad, I think they saw a way to push their agenda by riding the train of communism up the rail, because it does the same thing that Islam does. It puts in place control and destroys capitalism. So they look at it, right, and they're like, well, communism is already getting a good hold. This will be easier to ride this train to the top versus starting a whole new movement of Islam. But when we get to the top, we'll fund the Islam. Because it don't matter. It's all about getting to the top.
Right. I would say, man, I don't know. I don't know if my tinfoil hat should be securely fastened or not, thinking about that. But seriously, I mean, you got Obama who's part communist. We talk about living in a world that's incompatible with Islam and communism, but we have a president who's both. So,
right, but he will definitely. Well, when put to the test, he supports ISIS and Islam 100%.
He supports them, but I mean, if they're incompatible, I almost feel like there is a way that they can be compatible, and I think that is what Barack Obama is struggling with in his own mind, because he wants to support a caliphate, he wants to support Islam and all that stuff, but at the same time, he seems to completely agree with how he was raised, the red diaper baby childhood.
Right.
And he's believed it all the way up to this day, and he wants to further that agenda by implementing communism in the United States and maybe even go on to the world. I just really don't know. I almost feel like, are we being lied to? Because we're being told that Putin is this big ex-KGB guy, and he would love nothing more than to put communist Soviet Union back into place and make it a world power and all that.
Yeah.
And then you got Obama, who's acting like he doesn't like Putin because of this.
Well, and then Putin also calls him
like this.
Putin also makes fun of the fact that Obama's weak and he's not a leader. And Putin is kind of Billy Bad, and Obama is definitely he's
yeah, but that's just them. That's just them throwing jabs at each other.
One has testosterone and one has progesterone. Progesterone? What is it? Progesterone.
Estrogen.
Estrogen.
That's what it is. It's progesterone. He has progesterone. That's what it is. I think we solved it. We solved it, and we may actually have a visit by the CIA tomorrow.
I'm currently notating this right now for the archive. Progesterone.
Progesterone, whatever it is. Progesterone, whatever. So, no, here's what it is. We're being lied to, okay? Putin is not trying to get back the Soviet Union and communism. I think that he just misses the fact that his mother Russia used to be a power and they're not anymore.
Oh,
but I don't necessarily think that he thinks that communism was the way to go or the way to get back there. In fact, we may be looking at the future of capitalism all the way over on the other side of the country. Meanwhile, you got Obama, who we know is a diehard communist himself, who would love nothing more than to turn USA into USSA.
Right.
Right. And isn't it interesting that they seem to hate each other?
well, and I've come up with a theory of why, but